To mention just a few highlights, Naomi is the founder and CEO of Reserveage Nutrition. She has earned the worldwide respect and acclaim as the innovator of health and wellness field. And since she has launched the company in 2009, which is just 5 years ago, it's a huge accomplishment. And I think you're one of the only women in that field. And also, I would like to tell you that there is, she's going to speak to this, but I won't steal her thunder, but she has something very exciting to tell you about that. In addition to her business achievements, Naomi is becoming equally known for her commitment to social responsibility. I feel certain that she will speak to you about her work in Kuna and the Kuna people. I know we have a very special guest here today. And her efforts to help women move into leadership and the natural products industry. I am very proud to call Naomi a friend. She's become a mentor to me. And I'm very grateful she agreed to be our keynote speaker. So with no further ado, I would like to present our keynote speaker for lunch, Naomi Whittel.
So I was 6 years old when I ran away from home for the very first time. I had a little bag. I put my favorite doll in there and my little nightie that sort of gave me my security, a little piece of chocolate. I wrapped it off, and out I went. It was about an hour and a half later where it started to get dark. I missed my mom. I had to get home. When I came home, my parents were not happy. They wanted to know where I had been. I was in search of something that wasn't at home. My life was great. I loved it, but I just wanted to see what was out there. So about 2 months later, I said, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I decided to get on my big tricycle. So I had this big red trike, and I had a 3-year-old brother. Come on. So we got on our trikes, and we went for it. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that I wanted to find whatever was over there. And so we decided to bike out, and that we would get further than I had gone before. This time, when my parents found us, they were a lot less happy, because we had actually gone through a major intersection, stopped traffic. It was a kind of crazy moment. But my brother thought I was a hero, and I felt very brave. Bravery, to me, is what has led to my ability to produce all of the products that I do every single day. Oh, excuse me. It's also what I strive for. So you look at Mother Teresa, and this beautiful quote, whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. I believe very much if you can dream something and it's within your being, then you can begin it. And boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. This is a quote that I kept on my desk for the past 5 years. I always look to it because that boldness and that bravery is what I think is the essence of leadership in our own lives and in our businesses. When I moved to this country, I grew up in England. When I moved to the US, my stepfather had a plastic manufacturing business. A great man. He's a great, great guy. He's a Swiss-German man, and he had this great business. He allowed me to be the CEO of my own world at a very young age. So when I was 14 and 15, I could go into any meeting that he was having and sit there and have a discussion with the rest of the executive group. At dinner at night, every single night, when we had our family dinner, we would talk business. We would talk about, this aspect of the business, how the accounting team was doing, and I felt like I had a place at the table. I was never shy. I was always brave. I was always excited to learn what he had to share with me. And I let that curiosity build. My stepfather's been a huge influence on my life, and I was just on the phone with him yesterday. I can't thank him enough for allowing me to have the permission that I really needed to be brave. So here I am on QVC. QVC approached us a couple of years ago about bringing our nutritional supplements to them. I had a beautiful dietitian that was ready to go on air. Her whole life she wanted to be on TV. And here was her moment, and I was ecstatic. I loved it. So she went on air, and she spoke to the consumer, and she sold the product, and she did beautifully. But shortly thereafter, because QVC is such an amazing organization, they have such high standards in everything that they do. So every word that comes out of my mouth or any spokesperson has to be validated and confirmed. So we have these big binders that we put together. So if I'm going to say this nutritional supplement is going to help support your cardiovascular health, I have to have the clinical research that substantiates it. So my beautiful dietitian, Carlene, gets up on air, says wonderful things, but there were a couple of terms that were not fully substantiated, although substantiated in the research, but not in the data that we had presented. So QVC came to me and they said, Naomi, we're sorry. Carlene can no longer be on air. It's over. The only way that we're going to allow you to have your products on air is if you get up there in front of the camera, in front of the 120 million households, live, and make sure that every word that comes out of your mouth is correct. That's the only way we're going to allow it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm shaking just thinking about that. And you know, the blood sort of running to the top of my head, and I can't see straight, and I didn't know what to do. But as a businesswoman, this was this massive opportunity to grow my company and the profile of it. I didn't know what to do. I was really, really worried. And so I told them, let us think about it. Let my company think about it, because it's a huge commitment. I have to be flying up there all the time. I have to be spending, you know, a good portion of my time focusing on things that are different than my CEO duties. Let me see about this. And I don't like to public speak. Like, this isn't going to work. But I remembered the same amount of boldness that I have in the rest of my business, I needed to apply to an area that I was scared of. And so I hired someone to help coach me so that I could speak in front of the camera, so that I would know which camera to look at, because the cameras always change. I worked with a hypnotherapist to get over my fear. I did everything under the sun. I studied all of the great people that had gone before me or that are still on air. I talked to them. I interviewed them. I learned from them. I was brazen in my efforts to be able to effectively go on air. To this day, 1 hour of on-air time on QVC probably takes me 50 to 100 hours of preparation, because you never know where it's going to come from. Someone could call up, someone nice like Mary could call up and ask a question, and you have to make sure that you disclaim it correctly. That was 4 years ago. Since then, I've been on hundreds of times. I relish going on air. So here I was able to take this moment that really frightened me and grow through it. And I love QVC, and I love the opportunity, and I'm curious to see, you know, what other sort of moments I'll have in the near future that will allow me to elevate in that same way that QVC did. So this is a really kind of gross photo, and I'm sorry to show it to you at this moment, but it speaks to quite a bit of the way I look at business and the way I look at success. So everybody wants to be successful until they see the hard work that it takes, right? If you are doing the things that you love and that you're deeply passionate about, you're willing to make that extra effort. I mentioned how many hours it takes me to prepare to go on QVC. It's always about the practice, the hard work. There are lots of ways that our talents can be used, but if you're willing to put in the time, that's what it's all about. When I was 12 years old, my little brother used to come in my room. He actually just reminded me of this story. And I would have all these Vogue magazines around, because I thought Vogue was like the in great magazine, and I wanted nothing more than to read every little bit of it. 4 or 5 months ago, I get a call from a wonderful writer, Liz Welsh, and she said to me, I want to pitch a really important story to Vogue, and I want you to be my lead. And so we talked about what that would look like. And it was a story about herbal supplements, and are they safe or are they not safe? And how do you get safe nutritional supplements? And so it was a risky story, meaning not wanting to damage the industry in any way, but also wanting to be brave and authentic in the messaging that we were putting out to the Vogue reader. And there are over 12 million of them. So this is the October issue. It's just come out. It's been a great, great opportunity to share this message. For any of you that love Vogue as much as I do, it's on the newsstands. You can read that story. But having the opportunity to be able to have a feature story in Vogue is something that I would have never imagined could happen. What I found that is through hard work and effort, you can get to the places that you wouldn't even imagine. One of the other things that I think is very important, and that's helped me a great deal, and I think could help all of you, is something called sponsorship. So we all talk about mentorship, and mentorship and sponsorship go hand in hand. Let me tell you a little bit of the difference so that when you are looking for or working with your mentor, you can really know what you need to get to that next level. A sponsor. I had a sponsor at GNC. Her name was Beth Kaplan. She was the president of GNC. When she met me, she decided that she wanted to share who I was and what my products were all about with all of her colleagues. So she quickly opened up her Rolodex and would introduce me as, you know, the next best thing in the health and wellness space. Look at this female CEO, all of the good stuff. And it elevated me, and she used her credibility, and she put her neck out on the line for me to help my business grow. A lot of times with mentorship, it's sort of a passive relationship. So you maybe will sit down, you'll have a cup of coffee, you'll talk about different things, work-life balance, different issues, all very important. When you have a sponsor, you're looking at the relationship in a very different way with your work. They're active. You're meeting people. They're introducing you. They're putting you into all these different environments that may or may not make you comfortable, but can definitely elevate your game. So I'm a huge believer in sponsorship, and I recommend that everybody think about mentorship as part of the sponsorship. Innovation and collaboration are two areas of major focus, I think, for all of us. And truly, here's a picture of me on my way to, I think I'm in Ecuador. So I love to explore. I'm so curious. I want to know what else is out there. Curiosity is like, how would I say, it's sort of the child of innovation. So when you're curious and you have your passion, whatever it may be, just keep exploring. Because out of that will come some amazing innovation in all different areas. I strongly feel that when you drive through your passion, you will get so much further. I know I can say that from my own experience. In this picture, I was on a little plane. I don't really like little planes, but I was so curious to find this amazing active nutrient that grew in the cocoa bean. So cocoa is considered to be one of the healthiest things you can put in your mouth. The dark chocolate, the dark cocoa bean. It's got over 710 good compounds, antioxidants, flavonols, polyphenols, all sorts of good stuff. And I was on a search to find the perfect cocoa bean. I had been searching all over the place. I was looking through the literature. Where would I find the richest cocoa bean? How could I get there? Collaboration and innovation always are going to go hand in hand. I'll get back to the cocoa bean story in just a moment, but I want to share one other quick story with you that's very interesting as it relates to collaboration. So when I launched my company 5 years ago, I went to the south of France because in the south of France, the quality of life and the French paradox is certainly alive and well. So the French paradox is this concept that the French can eat, like very heavy brie cheeses, triple, cream brie cheeses, and drink some wine and eat a lot of food with olive oil, and yet oh, and lots of butter, by the way, and yet have some of the healthiest hearts in the westernized world. So what is it? I was very curious when I was in the south of France. So I went to the University of Bordeaux, and I went to the top researchers there that had done a lot of work around the French paradox, and I asked them, what is this all about? And they said, well, it's definitely got something to do with some of the ingredients that are found in red wine, like resveratrol. Resveratrol only really develops in the plant when it's needing to protect the plant from outside funguses or environmental toxins. So I realized very quickly that I needed to find a pure plant, an organic plant. So I searched for all of these vineyards until I found a couple of vineyards that I really believed were the ones that would produce the highest quality of this ingredient, resveratrol. And I was so excited, and I went to one of these farmers, and it was a 7th generation farm. And I asked in sort of my broken French, what is it that you do with all of that pumice? So pumice is, when the wine is pressed, it's everything that's left over. It's the seeds, it's the stems, it's the vines, it's all of this stuff. So what do you do with all of that stuff? And the vintner said to me, well, you know, we get rid of it. That's not important to us. And to me, that was the liquid gold. That's what I had learned, was where all of the nutrients that I needed to have in my product were. And so I said to them, well, how would you feel if I purchased all of that stuff, that pumice? And they said, oh, no, that's never been done, and that can't be done. In fact, we actually have to sell it to the government because they know for 1 ton of material, it equates to X number of bottles of wine, and that's how they tax us. So that's it. That's the only way we do it. So I kept pestering them, trying to collaborate, doing different things. And lo and behold, it wasn't right away, but within the first year, I was able to form that partnership, that collaboration. The government gave us permission to purchase that pumice. I purchased it for 4 times the cost they were selling it to the government for, so it really helped the farm and the organic principles that they utilized. And I had a product here in the US that was like none other. I then found a book that was just about to come out, and it was called The Longevity Factor by an amazing doctor out of Pittsburgh called Dr. Joseph Maroon. Dr. Maroon is the Steelers team doctor. He is a neurosurgeon. He's an Iron Man. He's in his 70s. He's a true inspiration, and he had just written this book. As soon as I got that book, I read the whole book, and I wrote him a letter. And I sent him my products, and I said, look, I've made these products, and they share a lot of the principles that your book has, and I'd love to meet with you. As soon as he got my letter, he called me up within less than 24 hours. 24 hours later, we were meeting. That was over 5 years ago. We have collaborated and partnered on so many things, and I was only able to have this collaboration through that desire to further myself and to build an amazing relationship that would ultimately support my consumer. So I highly recommend innovation, collaboration in every single way. So here's something that I'm very excited to share with all of you. This is a little bit about the life of the bean. So I told you how healthy cocoa beans are, and my curiosity and my search for the highest quality cocoa bean. Here's an example. You can see up on the right, that's a young cocoa pod. There's probably about 40 to 50 beans within there. It takes a cocoa tree 5 years, 3 to 5 years, but usually about 5 years, to be strong enough to be ready to be harvested. And it takes a long time for that pod to develop. Usually a tree will develop anywhere from 30 to 40 pods in a year. You can see here some of the work that we've been doing with the cocoa bean and with the cocoa pod. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the life of the cocoa bean until it reaches our products. And I'm going to share with you a beautiful story about an indigenous people, an indigenous group of people who revere the cocoa bean as much as I do. So the indigenous Kuna are people that live off the coast of Panama. They are independent. They have their own nation. There are about 85,000 of them. Half of them live on these beautiful islands called the San Blas Islands, and the other half of them live on the mainland. Dr. Hollenberg from Harvard University did a 25-year observational study on these people. And he looked at the ones that lived on the mainland, and he compared the ones who lived on the islands. And the ones that lived on the islands had like teenage blood pressure into their 70s. And mind you, these individuals live in huts. They don't have clean running water. It's not like they have this environment that's easy for them. And yet they had this wonderful blood pressure. They have 1/9 the rate of age-related diseases as the mainlanders. And so in this 25-year observational study that he did, he discovered that the secret to their health and well-being was the cocoa bean. It was the cacao. It was the flavanols found in that amazing bean that they would grind into this little powder that they would make a drink of, and they would typically drink it 4 to 5 times a day. So when the husband was going out to go fishing in the boat in the morning, his wife would give it to him, and they would drink it throughout the day. It was traditional. It is still traditional to them, but unfortunately, the Kuna have been subject to something called witch's broom. So all of their plantations have been affected by this awful fungus. So when I went there to Panama with Dr. Hollenberg many years ago, I learned about this awful disease that was hurting all of their trees. And so we made a commitment at that time to share their traditional story through our products, even though we couldn't source our cocoa beans from them, and start the planting and start building that. All of the cocoa beans that are being developed in the Kuna Yala Islands are organic. They will be certified fair trade so that we are caring for those indigenous people. And when we get them as a consumer, we know that we're getting something that's very good. This saying right here, female energy, talent, and strength represents humankind's most valuable, untapped natural resource. I saw this when I was walking in an airport one time, and I stopped. I said, that's exactly what I feel. I feel so strongly about that. And that was the platform that allowed me to start Dawn, which is my nonprofit developing and advancing women in naturals. But it goes so far beyond that. There's so much more to the untapped natural resource that we as women have, and it's very different than that of what a man has. And we need to always remember our strengths and our differences and what we can really bring, because it is untapped. And so if you can, remember this beautiful, beautiful saying, and let it inspire you to sort of reach your passion, your desires, and your curiosity to take you to that place that you've probably already dreamt of. So this is, so there was a little question before I came on stage that asked me, tell me a little bit about how you do the work-life balance thing, right? You're a CEO, you're moving all around the world, you're running a company, you have 2 children, how do you do it? And so I'm going to share a couple of little pointers that make sense for me, and then I'll share a couple of additional little pointers as to what are sort of the fundamental keys to what I think success really can mean. So the first thing I'm going to say about family and about this little guy in his Halloween costume, Christian, is that in my household, we don't have strict guidelines on who has to do what. So it depends. My husband will be happy to do the dishes, or I will be happy to change a diaper, or whatever it is. We interchange at all times, and that's just fine for us. I also have a very important philosophy that I keep close to my heart at all times, and that's the 5-finger rule. And this is what my sponsor mentor taught me about, and it's the plate. You can never have more than 5 things on your plate at once. Doesn't matter who you are, you got to keep it simple, right? So 5. And I've learned, which is very hard for me, and I think for a lot of women, to say no. To say no. You got to say no. Can't do more than this. And then if you're trying to do more than this, you're not doing it well. And then you start having all those other feelings that come with it. So the 5-finger rule. I also love to take some time for myself. And I know it sounds a little cliche, but I relish it. I look forward to it. And I know that I deserve it. And that's a very important part to it. So this little guy has an older sister. Her name, is Megan. Megan's 12 years old. She lives for Halloween. She thinks it's the best thing ever. It's like her favorite holiday in the year. I don't get it. She's already picked out my Daisy Duck costume this year. So she lives for Halloween. I had a very big meeting scheduled that we had been trying to pull together for about a month and a half at GNC Corporate. They just changed their CEO. I needed to be up there. And the date they gave me was October 31st. So I immediately said to my executive administrative assistant, that's just not going to work. And she laughed and she said, I know. And I said, make sure when you tell them that you let them know the reason it's not going to work is because I have to be home with my kids because it's their favorite holiday. So I'm not apologizing. I don't feel bad for making that decision. There will be other days when I'll make a decision to go to a meeting that is where I would rather be home for something else. But I always give myself the flexibility to make the decision in the moment that's right for me, for my family, and for my business. So that's the way that we'll do it. And I'll have 2 very happy little players this Halloween, and GNC respects and appreciates that point of view as well. Thank you so much.